Hello, everybody. This is Neil with Portal to Ascension. So good to be here with you all. And welcome to today, which is the solstice, the winter solstice. And I'm excited to be here with you all. For the first time ever, out of doing like 3,000 Zoom webinars, I actually have a virtual background. I was going to just go with my standard kitchen in the background. I figured let's be a little festive for today. And I'm excited for this because this is the third annual presentation on the solstice. I've committed to a lot of things in my life, but it's difficult to commit to one thing the same day every single year. And I feel pretty proud of myself that I'm doing it for this one. So today we are in the evolution of the truth of Christmas, pagan origins, and New Year's Eve / day. A reason why I really am committed to this event and I keep doing it is because I don't know if you guys noticed, but this time of year has been distorted, commercialized, forgotten the true origins. There's so much symbolism, so much meaning, and so much truth to this ancient wisdom. But this holiday season, for the most part, by 90% of the planet, has been completely forgotten. So it's almost like I feel like on one level, I'm holding it down for some of the truth by just putting this presentation out there. It might only go out to a few thousand people. Obviously, there's like 8 billion people on the planet. But just to put this awareness out there during this time of year, I think it's really important to create some sort of balance and to create some sort of spark of some of the wisdom of the ancient times of how we even got to where we are today, how we got to the celebration of the solstice, how we got to having New Year's Day on this time of year, and what is the history behind it? What are the gods connected to this? And then, of course, what is the reason for this season, Christmas? So I don't know if you noticed, but I'm extremely excited because it's my favorite topic, really. You know, I was raised, I'm raised Hindu, right? I was raised Hindu, but the benefit of being raised Hindu was that I was never told that my way is the only way. So within that, I was able to, I celebrated Christmas my whole life. I would get so many presents on a Christmas day. I was the eldest son, and out of all the cousins and in the family. So, in the Indian culture, like all of this, the eldest son is leading the way. And so I would have not only many birthdays, but I would have a lot of Christmas presents as well. And I watched shows on Jesus as a kid, even though I was raised Hindu. I watched shows on Moses. So I was really in the know, if you will, about the concept of Christianity and Jesus. And then when I started going deeper and deeper into ancient wisdom and esoteric awareness, all of a sudden, I started realizing all these manipulations and distortions. And as I started realizing this, I lost my faith, if you will. I lost my belief in not Christianity, in the day of Christmas or the holiday season here, until I realized what I'm going to show you today. When we realized all the information that we're going to be going deep into today, I started thinking to myself, oh my God, now I can have reverence for this time of year that transcends anything that I was brought up with, anything that's commercialized now. So there is energy towards this day. There is a reason why this time of year was distorted. And what we're going to do is try to decipher and dig through some of that to see what the reasons are. But then more than that, not just what the reasons are, what is the truth that we can embody now? So that's my little intro there. So I just want to say hello again to everybody. We're on New Realities YouTube. My name is Neil with Portal to Ascension, portaltoascension.org. We are on Portal to Ascension YouTube as always. And we have a good amount of people here, around 50 people in the Zoom room. So welcome to all you beautiful souls. And let's just get some interaction going, shall we? Let's just say hi. We have some interaction in the Zoom room right now. If you're on YouTube, go ahead and check in. How are you doing? Come, just let us know how you're feeling right now. Say hi to people in here. Where are you from? Where are you from, on or off planet? Because we're going to be talking about the stars as well today. So where are you from? Where are you tuning in from? Well, let's create this grid work because we're all just beacons. We're all beacons. We're not just beacons. We are beacons of frequency of light. And as we understand and embody this awareness that is being shared today and everything on Portal to Ascension, really, we're just sparking that frequency and just emanating it out to the rest of humanity. So let me go ahead and read some of this because this is the Pythagoras presentation that, guys, little disclaimer, I'm doing for free in January, my 4-hour expose on Pythagoras. That'll be on YouTube, and to all my friends and family in the Zoom room that are part of Portal to Ascension, you guys will get to check that out too. But I really do have a lot of fun with this presentation because there's so many different things as I'm going to go into here that I'm just like so into when it comes to what we're doing, what the traditions are, and all that. So who do we have in the room here? We have Reverend Jeffrey saying ho ho ho, feeling the spirit of the season. We got Debbie tuning in from South Carolina. We got hugs and blessings from San Francisco, from Jude, Teresa from Victoria, British Columbia. We got Homer, Arkansas, but grew up in the North Pole, Alaska. We got one of the natives of the North Pole in Alaska in the room, guys. So now I know I'm doing something right. And we have Susan from Toronto, Canada. John, Des Moines, hello. We got Belgium in the house, Southern California, Long Island. And you want to hear about Krampus? There's a little bit on Krampus, guy, Margie. And I did make a note to add a full thing on that for next year. So you got to come next year for that because this is so much. There's so much information here. All right, I'm talking a lot, so I'm just excited. But we're going to get into the presentation like within a minute. Don from California, hello. Okay, we got 14 degrees of over a foot of snow in Orcas Island, Washington. Hello, Nancy. Maine in the house, Houston, Austin, Victoria, British Columbia again, Nevada Desert, Italy representing, Louisville, Kentucky representing, Puerto Vallarta, Mexico. I am in Yucatan Peninsula right now in Playa del Carmen. And we got Australia. Yes, I was wondering if we were going to have Australia represented here. And Ithaca, New York. All right. So, are you guys ready? That is the question. Let's go ahead and dive deep into this time of the year. And first of all, happy solstice to all of you beautiful people. And I think we should spend a moment here because, you know, to be completely transparent, I've been having a rough couple of days. Today was really rough. My dad is in a hospital for his third surgery in 1 week on his back because the doctors, the medical system is completely whacked. And I don't even get into it. Just like the way the system has been created, especially when it comes to the medical industry, is just really corrupt. So I'm having some issues and I've been feeling a little funk today. And up until like 30 minutes ago. And then Joan of Angels, who a lot of you might know, living with me with Alan Steinfeld here, she came to me and I told her how I was feeling like 30 minutes ago. And then she came, she lit me a candle. She put some copal out for me in this thing here. And she said, remember that this is a sacred presentation. This isn't just information. What we're about to talk about here are some deep ancient wisdom of how we got to where we are. We're going to be tracking back, you know, the pagan world, polytheism, how it became monotheistic, what happened to the calendar, what occurred, these huge things that occurred on the planet in order to create control, manipulation. But again, beyond that, the deep symbolism that is embedded in the art, in the creation, in the mythology that represents who we are, represents the Christ consciousness. So this today is a sacred presentation. So I'm going to take 30 seconds here with you all, and we're just going to sit in silence before we get into this. Just want you, firstly, just to observe your breath. You know, I created a little hype, a little energy here, but we're just going to take a few moments now just to just be still where we're at and to observe the breath. And just take a few inhales and exhales with me. This is all very exciting information. But what is the reason we're sharing this information? With the hopes that with this awareness, we can contribute towards the awakening of humanity. So let's take around 10, 20 seconds for a moment of silence, if you will, for the beauty of what it means to be human and for the intention of the awakening of the Christ consciousness within us all. I invite you to take one deep breath in through the nose and breathe it out of the heart. All right. So go ahead and open your eyes and let's get into this. Okay, everybody. Are you ready for this? Welcome all to the Solstice annual celebration, in which I've done for the last 3 years, the third annual presentation on the pagan roots of Christmas, New Year, sun worship, and the Christ consciousness. Right before we get into the first slide, little promotion here that we are doing a Portal to Ascension conference in San Diego, everyone. Just letting everybody know at every moment I get. Portal to Ascension San Diego conference, April 21st to 23rd. And that is the 5th annual. And we're coming back for live events. And this is going to be incredible. Maybe I'll get a chance to talk about this in the end. But we're also going to Glastonbury, which connects to the Christ consciousness, because we have a presentation in Glastonbury for Portal to Ascension Glastonbury, August 11th, 12th, and 13th on Yeshua in Glastonbury in England. So that's going to be extremely interesting. AscensionConference.com from San Diego and AscensionGlastonbury.com for the Glastonbury event. Pagan roots of Christmas, New Year's, sun worship, and the Christ consciousness, and really beyond. We're going to be talking about much more than this, but that is the overarching energy of what we're really going to be focusing on today. So some of the questions that I had that even stemmed this presentation, that even made me want to do this, was how can the most celebrated holiday that is from a monotheistic religion, right? Christianity, monotheism, one God, be connected to paganism with polytheism? And how come that isn't widely spread and we don't even know about it? Right? This question really started my process of diving deep into this. But the original process that I really had, that I've shared many times with Portal to Ascension, was I wanted to know what is the root of all religion, right? The root of all religion. Growing up Hindu, I was never told that my way was the only way. So I started diving into different types of religions and realizing that even in the Hindu scriptures, it says that there will be many religions around the world based on the different cultures that exist. So different religions, different belief systems based on the cultures that exist. And so there wasn't just one way for everybody. Different individuals need to be approached with different types of awareness. And I started looking into this and looking into Christianity, trying to go back further and further through the Hebrew canon. And then all of a sudden I went to the Sumerian scriptures, which you're going to talk a little bit about today, the Sumerian scriptures and how it was the source code, the source material for so many other religions. However, when you go back even further and further and further from Christianity to Judaism to even further back, you find that these religions that are monotheistic actually have a root in religions that had multiple gods, right? So that piqued my curiosity and made me go down all types of rabbit holes in regards to trying to piece together what this really means. So that is one of the questions I have. How can this monotheistic religion be connected to polytheism? Why does Christmas have pagan roots? We're going to look at that today. And the origin of the Christmas tree, presents, ornaments, Santa Claus, New Year's celebrations, the traditions. We'll look at the traditions that we do that so many people just take for granted and just do follow these traditions. And it's okay to go ahead and follow these traditions blindly, have fun with it, receive presents. But I feel that doing things in life with intention and with awareness actually allows us to be a conscious creator. So we're going to be looking at what are the roots of all these traditions and how did they get to where we are today. And then, of course, the ultimate reason for the season, which is Christ consciousness, the Christ consciousness. How does that connect to all of this? So we begin on December 21st, which is today, I believe. Yeah, let me double check. Yep, it is today. The winter solstice has been celebrated in antiquity and seen as a significant time of year in many cultures and has been marked by festivals and rituals. It's marked the symbolic death and the rebirth of the sun. The symbolic death, and we'll show in a couple of images and graphs a little later, represents that the angle of the sun in the sky during this time looks like it stays at the same position. Therefore, when after the 3 days of the solstice is over, we start seeing the sun move again. So the symbolic death and rebirth is a symbolization of the sun stopping at this certain angle in the sky, and then all of a sudden 3 days later being what? Resurrected. Christ reference there, and rebirth of the sun. This is also connected to the Maya calendar connection and the 3 days of darkness that you might have heard within this community that has always been around this time. Even when 2012, December 21st, 2012 was such a huge thing and everybody was waiting for that, there was even rumors around about prophecies that there will be 3 days of darkness on that day. Well, what that really represented that was kind of misinterpreted, in my personal opinion, is the fact that it's 3 days of the darkest, basically, the longest night. So during this time, 3 days of darkness doesn't represent the full darkness. This is my opinion again. It could actually have multiple reasons and meanings, but represents the 3 days after the solstice of the darkest days of the year, the 3 days of darkness, which, as we're going to get into in a bit here, is the perfect time of year for the ancients to do the shadow work, to go deep within, clear out the cobwebs, if you will, clear out their consciousness, reflect on who they are, and do the shadow work. So the 3 days of darkness is connected to that shadow work. And today, just by the way, guys, is the 10-year anniversary of December 21st, 2012. So happy anniversary to you all. This is the 10-year anniversary of that date. And this connects, right? This whole thing connects. And you're going to see the number 7. So I just threw in that at the bottom there. You're going to see the number 7 spoke of a few times during this presentation. And I want you to keep that in your back of your mind and really take note for when that comes up. Because in the Maya calendar, we also see the number 7 as a very significant number. Also, multiple reasons, but the chakra system, which connects to the Christ consciousness and ultimately the crown chakra awareness, also the number 7, and the 7 stars of the Pleiades. Okay, the 7 stars of the Pleiades, in which the chakra system is connected to, and also the Maya calendar connects to the Palladian constellation, which is why the number 7, for multiple reasons, but definitely one of the main reasons within the Mayan cosmology, the number 7 is very important because of the connection to the Pleiades and the possibility that humanity may have been seeded from these 7 stars. So now that we begin with the solstice, let's go ahead and talk about some of the gods of the solstice. And what we're doing here is we're paying reverence. This presentation today is a presentation of reverence to this awareness. And within this, we're going to speak of different gods that were gods of the solstice, and also gods and deities that were the same deity, but with different names throughout ancient cultures. So ancient cultures viewed the solstice as the death and rebirth, right? As I just shared, often symbolized by the death and rebirth of the sun. And the sun in many cultures actually had a corresponding deity, right? We have the sun god Ra, we have Indra, we have multiple gods in different ancient civilizations, given, that is basically a deity. We have Apollo as well. So the symbolizing the death and the rebirth of the sun. This translated to the sun god of the respective culture. And in many tribes and civilizations, the gods were the exact same, but they had different names. And here are some gods of the solstice. And let's start with the first one, Aslielum, which is also a star within the Pleiadian constellation. We have Amaterasu in Japan. We have Baldur, the Norse god. We have Mithras in the Roman culture. We have Demeter in Greek. We have Horus in Egypt. And then we have Krampus, who is the son of hell, the Norse god of the underworld. With the spread of Christianity, Krampus became associated with Christmas, despite efforts by the Catholic Church to ban him. And just a side note here, when we get into the Santa Claus part, Krampus was also one of the names of Santa Claus, right? Which is also connected to the god of Saturn, which eventually became Santa. And then we have the Spider Woman in the Hopi, which was the sun god of the Hopi. So this represented the sun's victory over winter's darkness. The sun is stuck for 3 years, the darkest time of the year. And then 3 days, for 3 days in the sky, the darkest time of the year. And then all of a sudden, 3 days later, it resurrects. The sun is victorious over winter's darkness. So the sun god in as time progressed and polytheistic religions became monotheistic religions and myths became merged with the reality of the existence of actual enlightened beings that possibly walk the earth and avatars, the sun god eventually became the Son of God. And the Son of God here is a reference to, of course, Jesus Christ, Yeshua. And the Son God, connected to the Sun God, connects to the fact that eventually Jesus no longer was known as the Son of God, but then was known as the God, him or herself, the Son of God and the Sun God at the exact same time. The paradox, the Son of God, but also God, the incarnation of the divine deity of the Son. The sun stops at the same angle, begins to move 3 days later. The sun dies and is reborn. So the Son of God dies and resurrected. So this is the direct reference to this time of year and how it references Jesus's life. First of all, this day being the birthday of Jesus, there's no historical evidence for it. Actually, if you look at the historical evidence of, and you can't even say maybe this historical evidence isn't really evidence because they're just stories. They're not actually like, documented text of governments and different historians at the time. They're actually biblical stories. Actually doesn't have Jesus's birthday around this time of year. So we're going to go into why this time of year was actually correlated to Jesus' birthday in a little bit here. But the interesting part here and the distortion is that, of course, we have Easter representing Ishtar, Easter, which is a Babylonian god, that actually represents the resurrection of Christ, that was given that representation as the pagan holidays were hijacked by Christianity. So this whole concept of the Son of God dying and resurrecting is actually put onto Easter, even though it's this time of year that the sun is a symbol of death and rebirth, which we see throughout all ancient cultures, including Christianity. So there's a couple of theories of what really occurred, and the Christianization theory is one of them. In relation to how these symbolism of what's happening in the sky, how the symbolism of these different deities, and maybe a reality of these actual gods and extraterrestrials possibly living on Earth, how this eventually became Christianized within, that eventually led to our modern day concept of Christmas and this time of year. The major purpose for this was to incorporate a widely used pagan holiday to provide incentive and excitement in those who are being forced to convert to Christianity. And we see this with Catholicism and early Christianity, and even later, 1500s even, we see a Christianization by adopting the belief systems of the non-Christian folk and imposing Christian beliefs on it and deities on it in order to make it easier for these individuals to convert and accept this as the new religion. So the Catholic Church did not like this holiday, though, in the beginning. And devout Christians actually refused to celebrate it. It was mainly celebrated by recently converted pagans. So when, this time of year and Christmas and all the different holidays and the solstice and the sun was actually originally celebrated, well, before that, even before the pagans, completely different context, but was celebrated by the non-Christian world. But when these non-Christian individuals started converting, they continued to keep this holiday that was Christianized, but they kept this holiday in order to hold some reverence to their original belief system. Eventually, though, Catholicism accepted Christmas. However, the Protestants held out for much longer, and they actually hated the holiday. They hated the fact that it was connected to this pagan reality in which they believed was of the devil, if you will. Christians actually banned Christmas a few times around the world, up until even more recent. If you think of 1600s as more recent, but compared to the beginning of this holiday, it is more recent. So the Puritans in England overthrew King Charles I in 1647. And here's a portrait here of King Charles. Among their first items of business after the Puritans in England overthrew King Charles in 1647, after chopping off his head, they decided to ban Christmas. Parliament decreed that December 25th should instead be a day of fasting and humiliation, not a celebration, for the Englishmen to account for the sins that was what the day became. Because it was a celebration, a festive day, and we're going to get into some of these festivals soon here. And they didn't like that. So instead, they needed to repent for their sins, especially the sin of celebrating this day for so long that is based on this pagan beliefs that is of Lucifer, of Satan. So instead, they were doing fasting and humiliation on this day. And New England actually banned it at the same time due to the Puritans living there. And here is actually one of the public notices. This is how it looked, right? And this is exactly probably how it looked, but is a rendition of a decayed scroll, right? But you can see here, this is in New England, public notice. The observation of Christmas has been deemed as sacrilege. The exchanging of gifts and greetings, dressing, I think this is dressing, in fine clothing, or dressing in fine clothing, feasting and similar are satanical practices and hereby forbidden in the 1600s, with the offender liable to the fine of 5 shillings. But during this whole time, there was a slow and a deliberate intention of the elite within Christian kingdom to hijack Christmas. And again, it was in order to create some sort of holiday, some sort of way in order to more easily funnel these newly converted individuals into the tradition, right? What are the 2 largest holidays within Christianity? Christmas and Easter. Christmas, completely a pagan holiday. Easter is Ishtar. Easter is Ishtar. Ishtar is a pagan god, right? Pagan traditions and stories created the foundation of Christmas as we know it. Stories from all over the pagan world began being incorporated into this holy day. And here's an example. We're going to get into some stories now. The origins of the mistletoe story. Okay, this is the origin of mistletoe, which eventually became something that we so festively and excitingly might hold over somebody or have over the door, and means that you can kiss that person, or you guys should kiss or something, right? So here is the origin of this story. Baldur's Norse god mother Frigga honored Baldur and asked all of nature to promise not to harm him. Unfortunately, in her haste, Frigga overlooked the mistletoe plant. So Loki, the resident trickster, took advantage of the opportunity and fooled Baldur's blind twin Hoder into killing him with a spear made of mistletoe. Baldur was later restored to life. So that was the first story that was incorporated, one of the many stories in the beginning that was incorporated into the Christian world that eventually became the use of mistletoe. And then Christmas trees and presents. As we're going through now, we're going to go through some traditions here and how the Christmas tree became what it is, how gifts became what it is, why we use ornaments on the trees, and why we do what is commonly done by most of us here if we celebrate Christmas. The use and purpose for the Christmas tree dates back to the times and shamans and mystics in pagan Europe before the conquest of Rome. During the solstice, shamans would collect Amanita muscaria mushrooms on today's date, December 21st, and they will leave them to dry on the branches of the Christmas trees. Little side note, when we use these dates, the calendar had changed quite a bit. The Gregorian calendar, the Gregorian calendar, the Julian calendar, and we're going to talk about the calendar in a little bit here. But this time of year does represent the solstice. So what they called it, what the dates and months were, could have been completely different than what we're calling it now. But it was on today's date, December 21st. And what the shamans would do is they would connect these mushrooms. You might have seen them. They're really, really famous, I guess, psychedelic in the world that has been used by ancient shamans for many thousands of years. And what they would do is they would go to the Christmas tree, the evergreen tree, and underneath these trees were growing wild Amanita muscaria mushrooms. Every December 21st was the time that these would be ready to be plucked. They would pick these mushrooms and then they would put them on the branches of the Christmas tree. So 2 of the traditions have been referenced here. The original gifts and the reason why we have gifts under the Christmas tree started from this, right? And it has been incorporated with many other reasons and traditions all over the world since then. But the origination was these mushrooms underneath the Christmas tree They were the gifts, the presents. And these gifts were given to the community. And so they were the original gifts. And then they were hung to dry for 3 days. What days? The 3 days after the solstice, the 3 days of darkness, the 3 days where the sun's angle stays looking like it's the similar angle in the sky. And they were left there to dry because they were very wet, because they've been growing in the snow. And as they were drying, this story eventually became the ornaments that we know, right? The ornaments and the trees. If you look, at ancient pictures of Christmas trees, well, not ancient, but the last 100 years, 200 years ago, or even early 19th century, you see a lot of ornaments that are actually this exact same mushroom. This is the Christmas mushroom, right? There's a reason for it. So the original ornaments were actually not only mushrooms, but then when we actually started utilizing ornaments to adorn our Christmas trees, mushrooms were the ones that these same ornaments made out of glass and things like that were actually utilized as our original decorations for the trees. And it was because they were hung to dry there. So we now have the presents and we have the ornaments. So these mushrooms, and here you can see an image of a tree in the middle here with this mushroom as the ornaments. So these mushrooms were very toxic, but they became less lethal when they were dried out. Conveniently, they grow most commonly under pine trees because their spores travel exclusively on pine trees. Side note again, pine trees, pine cone, third eye, pineal gland, all symbolism there, all representing the pine tree, the pine cone representing the third eye, and representing the pineal gland. So these mushrooms spores would be carried on the pine seeds. So the shaman will often hang them on lower branches of the pine, so they were growing under, to dry out before taking them back to the village and give them as gifts. And here is a couple images I'm going to show here, because this connects to the Christmas tree, connects to the tree of life, the roots within the earth, and the branches of the tree, and the ultimate star, right? As you can see right here, on top of the tree, or the angel on top of the tree, or the fairy on top of the tree, represents the crown chakra, the full enlightenment. So the Christmas tree is a symbolism of not only the ingestion of these psychedelics that spikes on the pine cone that represents the pineal gland, opens up the third eye through ingesting the mushrooms, opening up the pineal gland, eventually going all the way up the crown, up the chakra system, from the roots of the tree of life, all the way to the star, creating full enlightenment. So not only does this tree have this amazing symbolism here, but we also have the mushroom, which is known as the Christ consciousness psychedelic. So when you're eating the mushroom, you're in essence eating this consciousness of the planet. And then when you get the psychedelic awareness, it's going through putting a huge amount of DMTs flooding into your system here, flooding into your brain, eventually creating this awakening experience. So the Christmas tree is actually a connection to the chakra system, and the root, the trunk of the Christmas tree is a representation of a spinal column, and the fluid going up the spinal column and creating that alignment. And we're going to get into that when we get into the section on Santa Claus, and how Santa Claus is also connected to the spinal fluid within our chakras, within us, in our spine, coming from our brain. That is the fluid of the Kundalini that awakens the chakra system to achieve a level of Christ consciousness and awareness. So these shamans were taking these things and giving them out to the community during the time of year that represented the inward reflection, winter, the inward reflection, the dark night of the soul, the shadow work, 3 days of deep shadow work, all connected to this substance, this psychedelic, and the tree symbolism as well. You can see here's another representation of that. The tree, of course, at the bottom of the tree, what do you have? The roots, the root chakra. Moving on now to what is right behind me. Here's Rudolph right here. Maybe you can see him. There he is, Rudolph. So, all right, guys, we're going to expose Rudolph right now. Or I should change this to Rudolph disclosed. So while the mushrooms would hang to dry, reindeer would come and consume some of the mushrooms. This is what happened back then. There were reindeer, and the reindeer actually enjoyed this mushroom. So they would come and they would consume some of the mushrooms. And it was easier for them to consume because they were already plucked out of the ground and they were hanging on the lower branches of the Christmas tree, at the right face level, ready for the reindeer to eat. So the reindeer would actually come and they would eat some of the mushrooms and they would actually get high of the fungi, and they will get so high, right? Or so, let's just say, psychedelically active that they would actually urinate themselves. The reindeer would eat these mushrooms and they would urinate themselves. The shaman and other members of the tribe would come and drink the snow in which they urinated in. So let me just take a step here and explain this a little deeper. This mushroom is so strong. The only way to ingest it is through fermenting it. So when they would take it to the communities would ferment this mushroom so that they can ingest it and get psychedelic experience from it. Lucky for them, when the reindeer would eat the mushroom, it would naturally ferment in the reindeer's stomach. So when the reindeer would pee out, when the reindeer would urinate, the fermented mushroom also, and the psychedelic substance within that would come out of the urine. So the shaman and, that would actually collect that and, give it out and also utilize with himself and others or herself. And they would ingest it, creating then receiving a psychedelic experience themselves through the fermented mushroom that happened through the reindeer's gut. So this is believed, and this, I've done a lot of research to see if this is false at all, but all I do is find research that actually backs up that this is true, because I really was curious about this. I wanted to provide as much of an alignment with the truth of our historical record as possible. So this is believed to be the origin of the phrase getting pissed, right? Getting pissed, obviously that's now in English. English was not the language used back then. That actually went down in history. And then also getting pissed is actually a term used within England, where I'm from, I was born, that which was also kind of the central area of this use of the shaman and the mushrooms and the trees and all that stuff. It was all over the Arctic Circle, right, in north, and Denmark and the Germanic tribes and all that as well. However, in England, this term "getting pissed" actually is believed to be the root of the term "getting drunk," getting pissed was from drinking the urine of the reindeer that would create this psychedelic experience. So Rudolph is the evolution of an individual ingesting mushrooms, morphing into the symbolism of seeing a reindeer fly. So now imagine eating the mushrooms, the shaman representing Santa Claus, right? The shaman coming, the reindeer ingesting it, the reindeer peeing it out, the shaman representing Santa Claus, many other representations of Santa Claus too, but one of them ingesting it, being under the influence of psychedelic, seeing the reindeer fly. So this is the origination of the story that we have of flying reindeer. And then Rudolph's nose also is a representation of the mushroom, the red nose. Rudolph the red-nosed reindeer was eating that mushroom. So let's get deeper into Santa Claus, shall we? Who is Santa? The original Santa was the shaman that collected the mushrooms with his pointy wizard hat. And mushrooms, as I said, this is the recap of what we just went over. Mushrooms are the ornaments and the gifts spread to the village. And the reindeers were the way of transport. So all this symbolism and mythology came together. The reindeers were then utilized, and through the sleigh, through the snow, Santa or the shaman would go from community to community, handing out the mushrooms, so that this time of year, this 3 days of darkness, this 3 days of shadow work could be the time that people go in and do the inner work, have the inward reflection when they're in hibernation in their home, so cold outside, and the reindeers were the way of transportation. The original Santa was commonly depicted as more of a gnome-like little man, often skinny and a little scary. So, and you can see here at the bottom that this is, so the original Santa, we'll talk about how Santa became who he is now, but the original Santa, not until like 1900 or so something, became the jolly Santa that we know. The original Santa, there were other ones like Saint Nick but he wasn't even clothed the way that we know Santa now. But the original Santa was kind of scary, kind of gnome-like, would like be sneaking around, this little elf going from community to community with a bag of mushrooms. And the sack of Santa Claus is what? The bag of mushrooms that this elfish kind of gnome-like shaman wizard would take to the community to distribute the psychedelics. And I just got to throw in the Smurfs here because the Smurfs is a complete representation of everything I just spoke about. The Smurfs show, not done unintentionally, 100% intentionally done a show based on the mushrooms. Look at these little individuals here. These are the little shaman-like gnome beings living in mushroom hearts that are the same exact design as the Amanita muscaria mushroom. So the show, the Smurf show, is kind of like, I truly don't know what the person was thinking, but it definitely was hidden in plain sight, right in your face. We're talking about psychedelics here. We're talking about some deep ancient wisdom, and we're going to put it in a kid's show and let you all see it. If you go to Disneyland, you'll see this mushroom everywhere. This is the Disneyland mushroom. You'll see this mushroom, and what will you see next to it all over Disneyland? Right? I went to Disneyland around 10 years ago, and I specifically went for one reason, to take pictures of all the symbolism within Disneyland, right? I didn't go to ride the rides, even though I did. I went to see if I can take symbolism of psychedelics within Disneyland. This was the one in California where I lived. And as I was going around, I was just like dumbfounded at all the symbolism of psychedelics and pine cones. There's like rows of pine cones with in the middle, this huge statue of a pine cone with a mushroom in it, representing the mushroom, representing the tree of life, the Christmas tree, representing the pine cones from the pine tree, from the pine seeds, carrying the spores of the mushrooms, right? And, I can go deeper and deeper into that rabbit hole, and I guess I will just for a second here. There's a book called Tripping by Charles Hayes. Charles Hayes was actually the roommate of Walt Disney. And he has this whole entire chapter in there about the psychedelics that Walt Disney was on as he was creating different things. Walt Disney, of course, he says he was on other things too, like cocaine and things, but there was a huge psychedelic influence in Walt Disney's creation of everything, which is why it's all over the place. So it's so funny to me that we have like Disneyland is supposed, a lot of you here watching this know how not pure Disney is, but to a lot of people in the world believe it's such a pure thing. This is what children, the Disney movies, but it's just all this symbolism of psychedelics and really consciousness there, just hidden in plain sight. Either doing it for a good reason, for a nefarious reason. Are they trying to just tell us the truth and so that they can't be held accountable in the grand scheme of the universe that they've actually showed us it, but they show us it through entertainment? Who knows? But I'm digressing within digressing here. So we have this Smurfs, going back to the Smurfs, psychedelic mushroom, and these gnome-like beings. So as we're going to go back deeper into Santa Claus in a minute, but I just want to take a moment to talk about elemental beings, because I'm talking about gnomes. And, this kind of looks like an elemental kingdom, doesn't it? First of all, the word elemental was only really came about in the last 100 years. So I need to let that be known, because a lot of people believe, these elemental beings have been here for so long. We've been talking about them as elementals. The evolution and the morphing of the word into elementals is really a new phenomenon, but doesn't mean that these beings didn't exist and they were called other things in ancient past. Because in Irish folklore, which has a lot of connections to the gnome beings and Santa Claus as well, definitely goes back 1,000, 2,000 years even, if not even more. So when I say elemental beings and I'm talking about ancient wisdom, I need to have a little disclaimer here that I'm not actually talking about elemental beings being used as a term for thousands of years. That's just what they've become known to us as now. So according to Paracelsus and his subsequent followers, there are 4 categories of elementals, which are gnomes, undines, sylphs, and salamanders. These correspond to the 4 Empedoclean elements of antiquity: earth, water, air, and fire. The Paracelsian concept of elementals draws from several much older traditions in mythology and religion. Common threads can be found in folklore, animism, and anthropomorphism. Examples of creatures such as the pygmy were taken from Greek mythology. The elemental beings, they were spoken of obviously nowadays in a lot of channeling info. channeling the fairy kingdom, the elf kingdom. There are planets out there, elfish-like planets. And this is spoken of extensively in channeling info. So I'm just going to take a few seconds here because somebody just knocked on my door. I'm going to leave the slide up. Give me 10 seconds, and I'm just going to take a look. So we just moved into a new place, and I think it is the owner. So excuse me for a second, and I'll be right back. And go ahead. Actually, let's do this. Go ahead and leave your comments and chat. I'm going to read the chat and comments in a moment. All right, so I'm just gonna take a break here and take a look at the chat to just see what kind of things you guys are sharing. All right. So Margie talks about what I said earlier about how I didn't have, wasn't really told that Hinduism is the only way, right? And she says here, Hindu doesn't try to control people's thoughts and actions. Yes, because Hindu was actually, first of all, Hindu was actually originally called Sindhu. When the Persians entered India, they didn't know how to pronounce sa. So they actually changed it to Hindu. So it was originally Sindhu, became Hindu. And it was known as a way of life, a dharma, a philosophy of the universe. And then it eventually became externalized. And as it became externalized, it became more a ritualistic religion. Also falling within the Kali Yuga, because as we went into the Kali Yuga, we became more and more ritualistic and contractual. And then Christianity, being birthed during this actual Kali Yuga, you're saying does both, is, has attempted to control people. Yeah, fundamental Christianity. So every single avatar that's walked the planet, there's no real doctrine on them telling people to create a religion out of them. However, that's what we've done, right? The Buddha is a great example because the Buddha, out of all ancient religious prophets, if you will, is the one that is actually documented so well, even within historical documents of governments and politics and kings, that he existed, that there's no doubt in our mind that he actually existed. There's so much actual historical evidence for his life. And he definitely said, so we have so many texts saying, do not create a religion out of me. So the fact that that's what occurred after that kind of shows that that's humanity's nature to follow and identify with things, even though this wisdom, this truth, it transcends all of that, right? So yeah, great point there. Okay, Michelle says, Christ consciousness is universal love, awareness that we are one spirit, all existence. Esu, Jesus, Emmanuel, Sananda's birthday is August 8th, 8 BCE. All right, let's get back into this, shall we? Okay, so we are now, again, we are on the elemental beings portion here. So yeah, just to recap what I just said about the fact that this term was actually a more recent term, and now in the last 100 years or so, we've been seeing it come up in a lot of channeling information as well, for people saying they're channeling the elemental kingdom. Beings that are tapped into the consciousness and live in harmony with the earth, right? Fairies, pixies. It is said that there was a time that they existed with humans on earth, and they shifted into another dimension, or a dimension in between dimensions, or even inner earth, or escaped from human violence and prejudice. So many movies, Lord of the Rings, Harry Potter, and so much more, show images of elementals, gnomes, these other types of beings. And when are most of these times set, right? Lord of the medieval times kind of thing. So the theory is, or the belief within a lot of people, or even a knowing from some, is that there was a time that we lived in harmony with other types of sentient beings, right? Whether they were elves or whatever they were. And over time, as humanity began devolving, these beings did not, or they chose not to. And when they chose not to do that, They entered other realms in which their frequency was at a different vibration than us, and then we eventually could not see them. This sound familiar to anyone? Because this really is in alignment with the splitting of the worlds, right? The whole concept that there's a harmonic vibration of Earth, a disharmonic vibration of Earth, and some go into this one, some go into the other. And this is what supposedly happened with the elemental kingdom, is that there was a splitting of the worlds. So if you look at, for example, Lord of the Rings, there's a whole elfish kingdom in which you go through this through Middle Earth, you go over this ocean, and through this ocean you go into this portal, which is like a phase out of dimension in which you enter the elfish kingdom. They talk about the stories of the time when the humanity and the elves used to live together, right? So it's kind of this concept that there's this reality that they entered into. And here's just an image here of, oops, do I have it? No, okay. So it is, so elementals and mushrooms. So how does this connect to the psychedelic connection to mushrooms? It is said and experienced by many that ingest psychedelic mushrooms, that they are connecting to the consciousness of the planet. Elemental beings are sentient creatures that are from Earth that we may have once coexisted with. Your environment can seem like it's so when you ingest mushrooms, for those who have, your environment can seem like it's alive and even breathing. So some testimonies say that everything looks like it's alive, everything is breathing, even the ground, the chairs, the trees, everything is breathing. So this is when you see how alive our planet is. This is where the crossover between the shaman, the gnome occurred. The shaman of ancient times, the elemental concept of that area, right? You know, from the Nordics, from the Arctic Circle, from current England to Scotland to Ireland to the Germanic tribes, you have these stories of these elf-like, gnome-like beings. And there were also the time in which these psychedelics were actually ingested by the shaman. So over time, the shaman, the gnome, the elemental being kind of merged into what eventually became the foundation for Santa Claus. The gnome is the bringer and the keeper of the earthly wisdom and higher consciousness that was correlated with Christmas and Santa. The gnome is the shaman, and the shaman is the gnome, merging together to bring consciousness to the community. Boom. Smurfs. The gnome is the shaman, and the shaman is the gnome, merging together to bring these mushrooms and awaken consciousness to the community. Lord of the Rings reference here. All right, so now that we went on that little side note, let's go back to Santa. The roots of Santa's bag of gifts, sleigh, reindeer, midnight flight, distinctive chimney-based means of entry into the home, and even the way we decorate our houses at Christmas lead to the ancestral traditions of a number of indigenous Arctic Circle dwellers. The Kamkaldales and the Horyaks of Siberia specifically had a lot of these traditions there. Throughout that whole area in the north as well, but there's a lot of these actually come specifically from them, and then through their migration was taken to other parts of the planet. This Santa is also connected to the god and planet Saturn, Santa, also the Roman god Saturnalia. On the night of the winter solstice, a shaman would gather several hallucinogenic mushrooms called Amanita muscaria, or fly agaric in English, and then launch himself flying into a spiritual journey to the tree of life, a large pine, which lived by the North Star and held answers to all the village's problems from the previous year. There's another testimony from people that ingest mushrooms shamanically or spiritually, is that all the answers come to you. Even Santa's outfit is designed like an Amanita muscaria mushroom. His black boots representing the trunk, his red coat representing the top of the mushroom, his white sleeves representing the dots on the mushroom. And then it was shifted, and we'll get into how it was shifted and made into even more, of what we see today. Saturnalia, a holiday in honor of Saturn, the god of agriculture, was celebrated, beginning in the week leading up to the winter solstice and continuing for a full month. Saturnalia was a hedonistic time when food and drink were plentiful and the normal Roman social order was turned upside down. Romans also observed Juvenalia, which was a feast honoring the children of Rome. In addition, members of the upper class often celebrated the birthday of Mithra, the god of unconquerable sun, on December 25th. Now, this is important here because this is one of the main reasons, right? We're in the new Rome, like Rome was the foundation for what's happening now. It really didn't stop, and I keep going down rabbit holes because of how my brain works, but I'll just go on a quick rabbit hole here. Rome, celebrating these days, the god Mithra, December 25th, Mithra being the unconquerable sun, the son of God, the sun. And then we have the Vatican Church that will actually continue to be actually the Roman pagan rituals in which they were under the guise of Christianity and they weren't actually Christian, that they were following these Roman traditions still. Then so it was believed that Mithra, an infant god, was born off a rock. For some Romans, Mithra's birthday was the most sacred day of the year. So with all that being said, I haven't even scratched the surface of the symbolism behind Santa Claus, right? So this is just another, like what I just said there is like 5 to 10% of Santa Claus symbolism. This right here is another 10% of Santa Claus symbolism. And there's still another 80% uncovered because of all the stories of what it represents and how it merged into what we currently know. So this is from, a mainstream science research website in which they were researching something called the claustrum. And the claustrum is a thin, irregular sheet-like neuronal structure hidden beneath the inner surface of the neocortex in the general region of the insula. Its function is enigmatic. Its anatomy is quite remarkable in that it receives input from almost all regions of cortex and projects back to almost all regions of cortex. We here briefly summarize what is known about the claustrum, speculate on its possible relation to the processes that give rise to integrated conscious percepts, propose mechanisms that enable information to travel widely within the claustrum, and discuss experiments to address these questions. That's basically the abstract of the research study here. And there's a lot of jargon there, so we'll break it down in a moment. But basically, it's this fluid-like substance that goes up and down the new regions of the cortex. And then it is also assists with the process of integrated conscious percepts, our thought process and different types of mechanisms and occurrences within our brains, but also our spinal column. The claustrum is a fluid-like substance formed in the brain. It is the precursor for our spinal fluid that travels down the chakra system / the spine. This is also known, the claustrum in ancient Greece, they knew about this existence and they called it Christos. Christos in ancient Greece was also personified as an individual that has the same exact origin story as Jesus Christ. But from 1,000+ years beforehand, that was actually a representation of the Christ oil known as the claustrum that starts in your brain and travels down your chakra system, lubricating and allowing your whole spinal column to do all the activities that it does. This was also known as the Christ oil, the cerebral spinal fluid, Christ oil. The fluid goes up and down the spine, and the neocortex, which has been related as a symbol of Santa Claus, going up and down the chimney. So this substance, as it says here, it receives input from almost all regions of the cortex and projects back to almost all regions of the cortex, is another symbolism of Santa Claus going up and down the chimney. The Santa Claus representing the Santa claustrum, representing the fluid that is the fuel for our chakra system and our kundalini, that is actually going up and down in almost like how Santa Claus goes up and down the chimney. So another reference to that. Multiple references to the chimney, I must say, but this is one of the main ones. So as I said here, symbolism everywhere. I'm huge into symbolism. I love to live my life symbolically. And I love this time of year. I love just everything around Christianity, Christmas, excuse me. because of the fact that it's just riddled with such amazing symbolism that is really genius, if you will. Like the artistic nature and the metaphors behind all of this that is occurring within our body is beautiful. But what's the beyond the beauty? What did they know about who we are? How did they know about this information? How did they know about the claustrum, the fluid? How did they know about the pineal gland and the chakra system? And how did they incorporate the Christmas tree and the symbolism of all of that to represent this awakening, ingesting this to the crown chakra and the star on top of the tree? So here is a video off the claustrum. It's about 3 minutes long, because I would love for you guys to learn a little more about it. So I'm just going to go ahead and play this in a second here. Okay, let me share my sound for you all. All right.
Claustrum, Santa Claus. Neurons inside the claustrum branch out and extend around the entire circumference of the brain, much like a crown of thorns. A group of researchers from George Washington University found that the claustrum can act like an on-off switch for consciousness. In Latin, the claustrum is known as claustrum haematolicurosum. Claustrum means barrier, haema means blood, and liquor means spirit. Therefore, claustrum haematolicurosum means blood to spirit barrier, which is exactly true, since the claustrum is a barrier between blood and cerebrospinal fluid. CSF is a filtrate of blood. Dr. Carey says, it is from the claustrum that the wonderful Christ oil is formed. In plain modern terms, the light, acting on the substances of the brain, forms cerebrospinal fluid, or Christ oil. 3. Cerebrospinal fluid. CSF is a filtrate of blood. In fact, there is a perpetual exchange occurring between blood, CSF, nerve or interstitial fluid, sexual vital fluids, and lymph. At the claustrum blood CSF barrier, the body turns water into wine every second. Water symbolizes blood, and wine symbolizes CSF, spiritualized substance. CSF has a significant charge. It is saline, salty with minerals, and alkaline, meaning electron-rich. CSF is secretly known as the blood of the lamb. The ventricles are even shaped like ram horns, hence the esoteric affiliation with Aries. CSF is the most electrically conductive fluid in the body. The breath charges CSF. The great regeneration relies on the charging and transmuting of this subtle fluid. The Kundalini utilizes that which is termed spinal fluid. It actually ionizes CSF and changes its molecular structure and consequently the basic DNA structure of the entire body. Dr. Zapatera says, CSF acts like a storage field and conveyor for light energies.
Before we continue here, I just want to make a point on some of the things that we've been sharing. I don't know if you guys noticed, but we talked about Saturn. Actually, we're going to get deeper into Saturn in a second, but we talked about Santa Claus, Saturnalia. We talked about the ram's horn right now. Well, maybe you are realizing that a lot of these symbolisms are symbolisms that will then eventually use for who? Satan, Lucifer. So I just want you to see here how a lot of these inherent truths were actually demonized and distorted in order to make us think of them being evil, right? Even the ram horn within ourselves, even the, I forget the name of the deity now, but the half human, half deer being, not the horse, not the half horse, but the half deer being in ancient mythology, that then his head became the symbolization of what they show within satanic rituals. That was actually an elemental being that was pre-Christianity, that was actually a symbolism of nature. That then, as you know, Christianity got hijacked, not immediately when when Christianity came about, because for hundreds of years, all of these symbols were actually utilized in the best ways and harmonic ways in Christianity. But then there was a period of time where it was hijacked. And one of them was with King James. And King James, you know, when he was coming home from France, I believe, to Scotland, because he was king of Scotland and eventually became king of England, he actually, King James the First of Scotland, I believe it was, he actually was in the middle of a storm, and he thought that somebody did some sort of spell upon him. At that point in the Christian world, you know, this is just before 1600s, in the Christian world, these traditions and nature and herbal potions and witchcraft and spells were still commonly used, right? There was a huge connection to earth and nature. And then he had this whole understanding that there was some sort of evil, demonic witchcraft going on. This was one of the few times in which there was a demonization of Christianity that eventually got to the fundamental Christianity that we have today, in which a lot of people are completely blocked off from these truths of who we are, what Jesus, Yeshua, or the truth of his information actually represented, the kingdom of heaven being within. And so at this point is also the beginning of the witch trials, right? So the witch trials happened at the same time after King James experienced this. So he started bringing all these witches, all these people that he thought that were witches, that were responsible of the storm that almost ended his life. And that was when, you know, people that were doing spiritual traditions, nature-like traditions, started being accused of actually being witches. And the name of that video, because somebody just asked here, is, if you look up "light received by the claustrum" on YouTube, you will find that video. So continuing with Saturn and Saturnalia. Saturnalia was a festival, holiday, vacation, good time to celebrate in ancient Rome from December 17th to December 23rd, ending just 2 days before the birthday of Mithra. When the god Saturn ruled Italy, this is the ancient story of it, right? First of all, this is an ancient story. So a lot of ancient traditions and cultures, like the Babylonians, you know, and the Romans and other ones around the world, talk about ancient stories that happened thousands of years ago, in which we know that that culture actually did not exist at that time. But when they talk about that culture and they talk about what happened thousands of years ago, they use their own geography to represent what occurred. So they're talking about an ancient time. But because they are in Italy, in that area, and that's their land, and they all these stories of how we've been here forever, and I guess to build up the ego and the pride of the nation, to be like, we are the most powerful, we've been here forever. They start utilizing their own geography to see these stories. A great example is the story of Gilgamesh. Gilgamesh's story probably happened at least 13,000 years ago at the last great flood, at the end of the last great flood. Sumerian Babylon was not what we saw it as in 5000 BC. But Gilgamesh, you know, I have a presentation on Gilgamesh on portalascension.org. You can check it out there. And Gilgamesh, his whole story is in the Sumerian scriptures, with the cities within Sumer that were only around 1,000 years old at the time that this story was actually circulated, but his story was much more ancient. So coming back to this, they're talking about Saturnalia. They're talking about time in Italy. This was a story probably happened maybe even in Atlantis. A lot of these stories I feel happened when there was a great civilization on the planet that had immense technology, huge spiritual awareness, and they're talking about those times. So when the god Saturn ruled Italy, there was a complete equality and there was no slavery, right? And this is from a country that was a place, an empire, that slavery was the cornerstone of their empire, right? So they would remember the days that did not need the slavery. So for this time, the elite would do hedonistic things, and then they would let go of that. And then there would be like, let's have so much fun. What happens when you have everything you need? Well, I guess you end up saying, let's have a time of year where the slaves become our masters and let's act like the slaves for fun. So that's what happened. They would allow the slaves to become the masters, treat them like slaves for fun. And that was one of the, it didn't happen the whole time Saturnalia was celebrated, but during the peak of the Roman Empire, that was actually one of the practices. It would provide the slaves with a day to blow off steam. And this is hugely important. Really used to reinforce slavery rather than focus on the equality that the day should represent. Really used to reinforce slavery rather than focus on the equality that they should represent. What does this remind you of? Every holiday that we're given, right? A lot of these holidays are given and given at certain times of year in order for humans and us to blow off steam so that we can get back into the workforce and become, I don't believe we're really slaves, but if you look at it from the concept of this matrix, and that we're all in it, feeding this fake system, working at jobs that people don't like, working at jobs you might like, but are feeding a system that doesn't benefit yourself or even the earth. This day, during this time of year, which eventually became our Christmas time, was a day that was represented equality, but was actually utilized to allow the slaves to blow off steam and have some sort of freedom for a few days so that afterwards they would be better slaves. Here's a picture right here of like a Saturnalia party. December 21st was considered to be the birthday of the Roman sun god Sol sun, right? Also Sol Invictus, also the birthday of Mithras. So there's a lot of reasons around this day, and it was really Roman, the pagan Roman world that we actually are utilizing December 25th in the way we do. But that came back from even more ancient time. And a celebration of Kronos. Kronos was god of time, okay? Another symbolism there, god of time, and the Titans and the giants. The sun is at its lowest ebb at this time. So if the sun is closer to the earth, it looks like the sun is closer to the earth, to the ground of earth, because like here's the human right here, here's the winter solstice, and the sun looks like it's closer to earth. So we're celebrating the birthday of the sun being closer to earth. So it's a really huge sun worshiping day. So the Santa equation, all of that just to get to this. Santa Claus, Father Christmas, Father Christmas, Father Time, Father Time, Cronus, Father of Time, Father of Time, God of Saturn, Kronos. Santa Claus, Father Christmas, Father Time to the Father of Time, which is Kronos, which is the God of Saturn. It is all connected to Saturn worshiping, which then got distorted to be the planet that represents the Luciferian energy, which is a whole presentation itself. I actually have on YouTube, Truth About Saturn, Portal Ascension YouTube, in which no planet is evil, but we give it beliefs, and we put on this energy upon these planets, like this represents that, but we have the ability and potential to polarize anything however we want. So just to show you kind of the Santa Claus equation there. So Santa has represented many gods, gnomes, shamans, and actual historical figures, and possibly even more. So this right here is only one evolution of the reason why Santa is what Santa is. Then, of course, we have the Christian Santa. Saint Nicholas, who was a Turkish cardinal in the 14th century, who was known for his kindness to children. This was immediate connection when Christians began adopting the holiday. However, all elements of Santa, including the pants, the hat, and the bag, and more, all originated from the ancient pagan shamanistic stories. In the 20th century, though, Coca-Cola played a huge role in rebranding of Santa Claus to what we know him as today. He went from a gnome-like being to a chubby, happy-go-lucky Santa that we currently know. The modern Santa. One of the first illustrations of Santa Claus was in 1862 when an American Civil War cartoonist, Thomas Nast, drew a little elf, elemental, supporting Union soldiers at Christmas. This image would eventually serve as the image for Coca-Cola. In 1930, artist Fred Midson painted a Santa drinking a bottle of Coca-Cola in a department store. In 1931, Coca-Cola commissioned illustrator Haddon Stonebloom painted Santa for Christmas advertisements. Those paintings established Santa as a warm, happy character with human features no longer were known, including rosy cheeks, a white beard, twinkling eyes, and laughter lines. The transformation to the current Santa was the product of the Swedish artist Haddon Sundborn, who, commissioned by the company, changed the traditional and more pious image of Christian folklore into that of Santa Claus of our days. And that is a lot of information on Christmas and the solstice. So now let's move into New Year's, which is also connected to this time of year, of course, but is also connected to the solstice and to and Christmas in general. So we're going to go now into really about what this day is and what it represents and how it actually became to be this time of year, New Year's. You know, because any time of year, you go 365.25 days later, you get to the same point in the sun. So why is it that we chose this specific time of year? Theodore H. Gaster says in his book, The New Year, "There is scarcely a people, ancient or modern, savage or civilized, which has not observed it. In one form or another, yet no other festival has been celebrated on so many different dates or in so many seemingly different ways." New Year's Day, the Julian calendar history. Christmas has been closely connected to New Year's Day since the days of Julius Caesar. The original date for the New Year was March 25th. We can partly thank the Roman king Numa Pompilius during his reign of 715 to 673 BCE. He revised the Roman Republican calendar so that January represented March as the first month. But even though it was done 700 BCE, it was not accepted or implemented widely. Since January was named after Janus, the Roman god of all beginnings, right? January, Janus, Roman god of all beginnings. March celebrated Mars, the god of war. Some sources claim that Numa also created the month of January. However, there's evidence that January 1st was not made the official start of the Roman year until 153 BCE, which is around 500 to 600 years after the Roman king actually deemed it to be the beginning of the year. However, even then, it wasn't even fully accepted. In 46 BCE, right, another 110 years after that, Julius Caesar introduced more changes into the calendar. Though the Julian calendar, as it became known, retained January 1st as the original opening date of the year, with the expansion of the Roman Empire, the use of the Julian calendar also spread. Now we're starting to see it more accepted in the world because the expansion of the Roman Empire during Julius Caesar's reign. However, following the fall of Rome in the 5th century, 500 years later, many Christian countries altered their calendar to be reflected of their religion, and they went back to March 25th. So it went around the world. A lot of people still celebrated March 25th. And then when the Roman Empire, Western Roman Empire collapsed, many of the Christian world then eventually went back to March 25th. And it was known as the Feast of Annunciation and became the common New Year's Day, right? 5th century CE, common New Year's Day, March 25th. The Christian world predominantly still celebrated March 25th as New Year's until 1582, right? That's 2,100 years after it was first introduced by the Roman king. That's 1,540 years after Julius Caesar started taking it around the world in the Julian calendar. So it took that long for it to shift to what we have today as New Year's Day. It became clear, and we're talking about the Western world. Don't forget the Eastern world, Chinese calendar. A lot of people, empires there worship their own dates based on the stars, based on astrology. In India, the New Year's Day in India was and still is, even though they represent the Western calendar too, was the return of Rama from the forest after being banned, and Rama and Sita story, and Ravana, right, representing the evil deity, taking Sita and kidnapping her, and then Rama rescuing Sita and coming back happened around October and November, modern October and November. Every single year, it's a different date because it's based on the alignment of the stars. So where the stars were at that specific date when Rama came back was a representation of the Indian New Year up until a huge influence of the Western world in India. So, and a lot of times, the Festival of Lights in India, which is actually the return of Ram, where they light the divas, is actually a representation of the actual New Year. It became clear that the Julian calendar required additional changes due to miscalculation concerning leap years. The cumulative effect of this era over the course of several centuries caused various events to take place in the wrong season. It also created problems when determining the date of Easter. Pope Gregory the 13th introduced a revised calendar in 1582, which is around the same exact time as the Western world, the Christian world actually adopting it as well. In addition to solving the issue with leap years, the Gregorian calendar restored January 1st as the start of the new year, while Italy, France, and Spain were among the countries that immediately accepted the new calendar. Protestant and Orthodox nations were slow to accept it. Great Britain and its American colonies did not begin following the Gregorian calendar until 1752. Before then, they celebrated New Year's Day on March 25th. So only 300 years ago has it really been widely around the entire planet. Okay, we're going to jump forward into more New Year's Day information in a second, but I'm going to go ahead and take a little pause right here and fill up my water and just take a look at everything he's saying here. All right, everybody. So I'm just going to grab some water and just take a few seconds here. Go ahead and say something in the chat room. What are you feeling about this information? What is it bringing up for you? What is something that you're interested in here? And just get some energy going, and I'll be back in about 20 seconds. All right. Denise says, sounds like a Christmas party and bonuses to get employees to work harder and enjoy their jobs. Yep. Breaks are needed as the info is full and rich and needs time to be absorbed. Okay, good to know, Nancy. Good to know. All right, so speaking about taking time to absorb, let's just take a moment here and just breathe together. Because what I'm getting at with all this awareness is that it's all about the Christ consciousness, and it's about the symbolism, and it's about the artistic nature and the antiquity of humanity. How ancient we go. Isn't it amazing and interesting to know all these different things that happened thousands of years ago to get us to where we are now, right? And a lot of these different traditions even date back to a great civilization that probably existed on the planet that may have got wiped out with a great flood, okay? So these are collective memories of humanity that have come out in beautiful mythological and real literal depictions as well, and stories that we're now utilizing and doing. When I found out these truths about Christmas, the solstice, and New Year's, I had gone for just to be completely honest, when I woke up to this information in 2001, consciousness, extraterrestrials, ancient civilizations, when I woke up to all this, 2004, 2005, I was like 22, 23. I'd already been in this for a few years, and I'd been celebrating Christmas my whole life. I then started kind of not liking Christmas, kind of hating the control, the consumerism, what's been happening, all this stuff. And then all of a sudden, 2006, 2008, I started realizing all this information. And now I celebrate this time of year more than I ever have, because I feel that I'm doing it with true reverence for the meaning of it all. When I put up a Christmas tree, I see the tree of life. When I see the gifts under the tree, I see that it represents the seeds that have been left by the deities, by the gods, by the planet, in order for us to be an awakened being. And when I see the light at the top of the tree, I see the representation of the potential that humanity has. So when you go into these ancient stories, it's truly a symbolism. All these stories are symbolism of how we can be our true potential, how we can continue doing the work in order to clear out the energies and the density of this reality so that we can truly live in harmony and peace. We have a comment here. This discussion has encouraged me to take magical mushrooms. How do I get That's so funny. Jessica says, I, for one, am still deprogramming from being raised in a very strict Christian dogma. Is helping me heal a lot of this information. And yes, we are reclaiming the truth. Thank you so much for sharing that, Jessica. I love what you guys are sharing right now. You know, feel free to keep sharing anything because that feels so good. All right, let us get back into this. So back to New Year's Day. So I'm just going to read the part, you know, I have a tendency to read what I read multiple times over. So I'm going to do it just for this last part here, just to funnel it back into what we're talking about. In addition to solving the issue with leap years, the Gregorian calendar restored January 1st as the start of the new year, while Italy, France, and Spain were among the countries that immediately accepted the new calendar. Protestant and Orthodox nations were slow to adopt it. Right? It was very interesting. Protestant and Orthodox nations that were became fundamental, the roots of fundamentalism, were actually still following the traditions of the pagan world, right? Not even knowing it. See the blind faith that has just happened. A lot of people, even 1,000 years ago, hundreds of years ago, were even aware of the roots of what they did and why. Great Britain and its American colonies did not begin following the Gregorian calendar until 1752. Before that, New Year's Day, March 25th. The new celebration in Mesopotamia, right, going back further, circa 2000 CE, around the time of the vernal equinox, which occurred around March 25th, there were barely 10 months at that time. The calendar at the time was based on seasons, and the planting season began in March. Why was March the beginning of the new year? The planting season, the blossoming, the harvest, you know, the harvest comes later. I mean, the beginning before the harvest. So it was the new year, everything was alive again, right? The winter season, you're in hibernation, you're in the dark night of the soul, you're in the shadow work. A lot of places in the world where a lot of stories come from, it was extremely cold, and didn't have the heaters back. So March was the time of year for that. So even if it came from this ancient, you know, pagan world, I feel the word pagan is really limiting. Needs if you have another word for that, let me know, because I'm trying to reverence. And pagan has been hijacked so many times and made a thing be Luciferian and all that stuff. Then it just became known that that's the best time of year because it's the time where you plant and things basically grow. This eventually shifted to December and celebrated with a 12-day festival. So in ancient Mesopotamia, it also did to December. And they celebrated with a 12-day festival calling the Zamuk, which literally means beginning of the year. It celebrates, this festival celebrates the triumph of Marduk, the patron deity of Babylon, over the forces of chaos, symbolizing in later times by Tiamat. Here we go again, another metaphor, another symbolism for the sun conquering the wind's darkness, the sun, the light conquering the darkness, light conquering the darkness. That's what this represents. In the triumph of Marduk, the pagan deity of Babylon, over the forces of chaos, chaos representing the darkness, Marduk representing the light. Boom. Celebrates the triumph of Marduk, said this. This is a Babylonian script tablet here of Marduk. Notice the snakes, which is also a whole presentation in itself. So this wouldn't be a presentation in which we speak about Christianity without speaking about the Council of Nicaea. And also, I'm going to do I don't want to go too deep into this because I want to also honor my ignorance in some places. And I really, really, especially as of late, have been focusing on what I know rather than speculating upon what I've researched, rather than what I've heard from others. You know, a lot of you might have heard the Council of Nicaea, manipulation of Christianity, gospels that were thrown out. Is there much for that? It's not too much. Some of this probably did happen. The Council of Nicaea and the doctrine and the text actually exist. You can. It doesn't really even speak about that, but there are some things that in there that we're going to talk about. Thus said, let me read this quote, King James Bible, 1611. Thus said the Lord, learn not the way of the heathen, and do not dismiss the signs of heaven, for the heathen are made at them. Jeremiah 22, King James. The heathen is representing the pagan world. Be not dismayed the signs of the heathen. The signs of the heathen represents the traditions and the beliefs of the pagan world. The King James Bible is one of the most manipulated versions of the Bible that is in the existence. So many things, including this, were verses that were added at a later date. So in alignment with the new calendar coming about, a shifting from 1500 to 1600, there was a huge shift from anything pagan to 100% the foundation of the modern world. Also, the witch trials, right? The people who worship nature and things like that starting to be demonized as witches. Here's a little image here of the Council of Nicaea. So what is this council? Well, there was a debate. Basically, Constantine, the Emperor Constantine, called forth around 325 AD, called forth all of the elite, if you will, or popes and priests, and the different sects of Christianity, because there were so many, and called the leaders forth in order to create a council of Nicaea. And within this council, they had a discussion of a few things. One of the things was there was a debate of who Christ was. There was two opposing sides. And one of the main reasons for this meeting was to decide which one is right. There was two opposing views, and Constantine wanted to squash this quarrel, plus other things, create manipulation, control, and all that, but wanted to squash this quarrel so that they can go forward with the Christian world with one of these being the predominant thing and create it as an umbrella religion that everybody could go into rather than these opposing sects. That kind of backfired, right? Because look at how many sects there are now. So there was a debate over who Christ was. Was he a man who became ascended and enlightened, or was he the actual incarnation of God? That was what it was about. Who was he really? Was he God incarnated, the Son of God, but really God? The Son of himself, if you will? The Son God, don't forget, the Son God became the Son of God. Jesus and his life and his resurrection represents the Son. Jesus and the Son, S-U-N, are one and the same. The Son is God. So does Jesus represent the actual God during this sun worshiping time? And, this was during sun worshiping. So all the a lot of pagan religions before, the Greek traditions, Sumer and Egypt, the sun god, it was the time of worship of the sun god. Christianity was just a continuation of that. Christianity was the Son of God now, like a personified individual, rather than the God himself. So they were like, wait, is Jesus the Son of God, but also God? Or was he an individual that attained avatar-like status? The belief was he was an enlightened human. So what won out of Council of Nicaea, what was actually victorious, the side, was that he was an enlightened ascended human. So what I believe too, so I think partially the truth actually came out of that original meaning, right? There were other things that happened, of course, that were manipulative and control, but that part actually won. He was not God incarnated. He was actually an enlightened human. I read parts of the Council of Nicaea, the actual original text. That's where I got this from. And he believed that he was an enlightened human. He won popular belief. But then later, through popular beliefs and basically grassroots movements, right? Not in a great way, I would say, but grassroots movements to control the masses from the other side that believed that he was God, even though the people that won out of that were the ones that thought that he was an enlightened being. Who really won over the next 50 plus years was the belief that he was God incarnated. So now fast forward to modern times in Christianity and fundamentalism. Jesus is the Son of God and Jesus is God. Jesus is actually God, right? That this is where these two beliefs kind of butted heads, if you will, and then the eventual belief that we currently have came out of. Also, the control part. There was a debate over what gospels will be utilized because there was no one canon of information. There was so much. It was fragmented. There was different gospels. There were gospels close to the time of Jesus' life. There was newer gospels. There was stories about stories. It was just so confusing. So we needed to create a consensus, and we're going to choose one of these sides, and we're going to create an umbrella religion to exert control and to not have so many people warring within the Roman Empire, so we can maintain order, right? Through chaos will come order. Also, an Illuminati phrase. How are we going to do that? Well, we need to really figure out which ones of these are going to benefit us. And the ones that were chosen were the ones that benefited control, benefited worship, but also allowed for the Roman emperor to still be the head of state and to be now appointed by not the gods, but by God and Jesus himself. The Muratorian canon. So now I was curious as I was doing this presentation, when was the first compilation that actually occurred that resulted in an actual Bible that we currently have? You know, and some of us, when you go to hotels and you open up that drawer right there, there's a Bible there. Well, what's the root of how that even occurred in the first place? Well, the first compilation was in 200 AD and was called the Muratorian canon. And this is it right here at the bottom. Okay, so the bottom left is actually an image of it. It is the earliest compilation of canonical texts resembling the New Testament. But it was not until the 5th century, around 150 years after Constantine and this whole thing occurred, that all the different Christian churches came to a basic agreement on a biblical canon. So now we're still talking about New Year's here. So we've talked a lot about the Christians and Christian years, and I talked about a few different places in the world, and Indian tradition as well, and Babylonian tradition, and Julian calendar, the Roman calendar. And now we're going to talk about a few other places in the world that and what their New Year's celebrations were like. So 4,000 years ago, 2000, also when the first new moon in March, the Babylonian one that I spoke about a little earlier, the Babylonian Akutu. Following the first new moon in March, the Babylonians of Mesopotamia honored the rebirth of the natural world, worship of nature, with this festival. Statues of the gods were paraded through the city streets, and there were ceremonies symbolizing the victory over the forces of chaos. Sound familiar? This is also the ritual humiliation of the king on this day. Another root 2,000 years before Saturnalia was worshipped in Rome, the foundation of it, ritual of the king on this day. Then going into this day where they basically give the slaves a day to be the kings and queens and actually treat the hierarchy as if they're the slaves. And then we have Janus in ancient Rome. Rome, they love to party, guys. And in Rome, multiple celebrations, long celebrations actually. 2,000 years ago in Rome, years of tampering, and Janus, being the god of the new beginnings, years of tampering with the solar calendar eventually established the holiday on January the 1st. January carried a special significance, a lot of change and beginnings. Janus was seen as a symbolically looking back at the old and ahead to the new. So he had two faces. And this became tied to the transition from one year to the next. It was common for friends and neighbors to exchange well wishes on this day. According to the poet Ovid, most Romans also chose to work for at least part of New Year's Day, and idleness was seen as a bad omen for the rest of the year. So we are, in essence, living in the second ancient Wepet Renepet. And in the background here is actually the star of Sirius, the Sirius star, even though it's a trinary star system. When Sirius, the brightest star in the night sky, first became visible after a 70-day absence, usually mid-July, Wepet Renpet means opening of the year. The new year was seen as a time of rebirth and rejuvenation. Discoveries at the Temple of Mut showed that the first month of the year played host to a festival of drunkenness. This was tied to the myth of Sekhmet, a war goddess who had planned to kill all of humanity until the sun god, Ra, tricked her into drinking herself unconscious. The Egyptians would celebrate with music, sex, and alcohol. Other New Year celebrations, Chinese New Year, 3,000 years ago, we see the beginning of those celebrations for what we currently have now. Nowruz, which was in Iran, celebrated by the Zoroastrians. Evidence suggests this day was celebrated as far back as the 6th century BCE and all the way to 7th century CE. So let's all just take a moment here, guys, and I want to welcome and invite all of you all to, in this moment, take a deep breath in with me and exhale it to the heart. Let's take a deep breath in, shall we? Let it out. Let's do it again. Deep breath in and out. One more time for good luck. Deep breath in. As I said in the beginning of this presentation that Joan mentioned to me 30 minutes before we went live, this is a sacred presentation. We're speaking about ancient times here. We're speaking about the stories of how we got to who we are and why we do the things that we do. There's been shifts in our reality, in astrology, in the alignments of the stars that has created times of years, times and centuries in which we paid reverence to different elements on Earth and in the stars, whether it's Sirius, like we just saw from ancient Kemet, Egypt, whether it's the Earth itself and the elements of Earth, or the blossoming of the seasons, or when we look at ancient religions that actually are sun-worshipping religions, worshipping the sun, that came from a reverence to the sun, but as we fell from grace, as we devolved, as we entered the Kali Yuga, became ritualistic and became worshipping and asking for, please help me, rather than the reverence and the beauty and the gratitude for the elements. We went from a place of gratitude from the elements of all creation, not just Earth, but all stars, Sirius, sun, everything, to please help me, sun, please help me, God, right? And then Christianity, the major religion of Christmas at this point, coming from this pagan world, that is actually a continuation of sun worshiping, in which has been under the disguise of a personified deity that was the Son of God, that is actually the S-U-N of God, the Son itself. Not to say that Jesus didn't exist, because I think Yeshua did, and all the symbolism was combined. But this gives us a perfect segue into speaking about sun worshiping and how it connects, because the solstice, let alone Christmas and New Year's, what is New Year's? Well, it's a representation of one holy lap around the sun. What is Christmas? Well, it's a representation of the birth of the Son, Jesus. Okay? Even though the sun resurrects over 3 days, like the resurrection of Christ, it's a representation of the sun being reborn after 3 days of the darkest days of the year. Rebirthing of the sun. That leads into New Year's, which is the beginning of a whole new lap around it. We can track sun worshipping ritual in Mesopotamia called Babylonian Akitu. That's what I just showed you, 4,000 years ago. Christmas, solstice celebration, New Year's Day, sun worshipping day, all sun worshipping days. Remember Amun Ra or Amun Ra, right? It became Amun later. Ra Amun, Ra Amun, Ra from Egypt, the sun god from Egypt, right? sun god from Egypt's last name or first name, however you want to say it, Amen, which came from Amun, then became the closing prayer for Christianity and Judaism. I don't know if they have in Judaism, but Christianity, Amen. Amen, utilizing Christianity, was the name connected to Ra, that was the sun god. Now it's utilized in Christianity to end a prayer in which we're worshiping the Son of God. Seeing all the symbolism connect here. The Egyptian sun god, Ra, Amen. So obviously we've been worshiping the sun for quite some time. Sun worshiping can be traced back at least 4,000 years, which is 2,000 years before Christ, right? And there were other civilizations before that worshiped other things, other constellations, the Star of Sirius, the Dogon tribe in India, different places. And then I'm sure there were other times where the sun was worshipped again. And this connects to the zodiac, the precession of the equinoxes, and whatever zodiac is predominant in the sky at the time. Right now, when we just exited Pisces, we're entering Aquarius. All of this is connected. The sun god became the Son of God. We see in many ancient civilizations a movement to pick one god, and in most cases, it was the sun god or god of Saturn. So as we see the evolution occur to polytheistic religions from pagan world to a monotheistic religion, we see that there's actually multiple gods, and then one god is chosen out of the many, right? In the ancient Sumerian scriptures, it says, choose me out of the many, the Elohim, many gods, which is a plural, Yahweh being selected, right? And then as that one God. So we see that the one God chosen in many times was either the sun god or the god of Saturn, and sometimes they were interchangeable. So sun worshiping pre-Christianity. Even though there was sun worship and that many have been the main god, like the sun had been the main god, different gods worshiped different gods, and different people worship different gods at different times. They would rise and fall. There would be, in ancient Egypt, lasting for thousands of years, maybe even back as far as 13,000 years or beyond, because of the new information about the Sphinx and how old the Sphinx is. They went through different constellations, different zodiacs, different precession of the equinoxes, and different cycles of time in which different deities would rise and fall. Different gods would be worshipped at different moments. Even though we may think of polytheistic civilizations, many have worshipped the sun. We worship the sun now more than ever, and the majority of the people on the planet are blind to this fact. It's all right to worship the sun. It gives us light. It's a light over the darkness. It's the conquering. We are like moths to a flame, guys. We're looking at the sun, worshiping it. It gives us light. It gives us, we are plants, and we're receiving photosynthesis from the sun. So it's okay to look at the sun and pay reverence to it. But what maybe not be okay, and what allows us to be controlled, is how blind we are to it. We've created matrices within matrices. We personified this planet and put it with myths of other avatars that existed. And then the stories became just of those stories of those individuals. And we forget the nature element, what this all came from. Nature isn't just Earth. Nature are the stars. Nature is the moon. Nature is the sun. Everything that fuels nature on this planet is a part of us organically. The celebration of New Year's is never once commanded in the Bible. Jesus and the apostles never even observed it. Moses forbade it. They were moving away from sun worshiping. It was a part of the original avatar thing. So for us to even connect the sun to this, when these avatars and stories of them were that they didn't even want to really pay reverence to these ancient ways that they didn't believe are true, and true alignment to what the real thing is, which is not the worshiping, but is the reverence and the gratitude for its existence. So, with all of that being said, first of all, I appreciate you listening to me rant about this. But with all of that being said, I want to say, what is there to ponder? Okay. What does all this mean for us? Will there be days when we stop worshiping the sun? And will the solstice celebration and New Year's Day celebrations go because of this? What will happen once we become conscious of how blind we have followed these rituals? What will happen when we become conscious of how blind we follow these rituals? Will it add more to us since we could be more intentional with it? Like all the things I said with Christmas? Will it give us more of an intention? Will we change these beliefs? Will we change the way that we operate? Instead of worshiping the sun, maybe we'll give reverence and gratitude to it, but not base our existence on its worship. Instead of worshiping the sun, maybe we can give reverence to it and gratitude, but not base our existence on the worship, the lap. Please help me. Please, Son of God. Please, Son of God. Please take away these pains from me. How, victimhood. So what is, could we lead with this awareness? Can we shift from victimhood to conscious creators? What comes after sun worship? Okay, and I'm going to end with this one. If we look at ancient cultures, we talk about the central sun. Mayas talk about it. So many other cultures talk about the central sun. A lot of people think that we're talking about the actual sun being the center of our solar system. But no, the central sun actually represents the black hole in the center of our galaxy. So what I want to close this with is that we're moving away from the worship of the sun and the limitations of just our localized solar systematic community to the understanding the power and the potential of the central sun, in which all these other systems and beings and ETs and star beings and planets and systems are rotating around. So we're in a process from moving out of sun worship that's been going on for thousands of years into what I call galactic reverence. So thank you all so much for listening to me, tuning into this today. And I just want to say, Mary Mushroom, Christ Consciousness, Spiritual Awakening, Tree of Life, Pagan, Sun, Seasonal Awakening, Santa Claustrum, Spinal Fluid Reverence Day /period. I appreciate you all. Love you all so much. I'm going to close the presentation and see what you guys have to say and share right now. And before we actually close out with the actual stream, I'm going to also show you that we're going to Egypt in September of next year. I want to show you the Portal Ascension Conference. So again, thank you. We're going to get into questions and comments, and then I'm going to show you a few amazing things we got going on for 2023. All right. Denise says, okay, thank you guys. So Denise says, I'll never look at the Christmas tree the same again. I was getting to hate it because it was so commercialized. Not anymore. Thank you, Neil. This year is totally different. Yeah, that's what happened to me when I found this stuff around. Thank you for doing this today. Galactic Reverence, yes. Thank you for today's presentation. Big thanks. Very interesting. Very grateful for all your effort and research you put into this. Such a fascinating Zoom. Denise says, also would love to obtain some of those mushrooms. And then we have, thank you for all this super interesting information. Wonderful. So if you guys have any questions, let me know. Otherwise, I'm going to show you a couple of cool things we're up to. Thank you, Neil, for sharing this knowledge in an organized and thoughtful presentation. Your enthusiasm is awesome. Thank you so much. Bob, grateful for you too, brother. Happy solstice, happy enlightenment. All right, so if you have questions, go ahead and drop them in the room here, and I'm going to go ahead and show you a couple of cool things that we're up to at Portal to Ascension. We're actually going to do a stream. I'm here in Mexico in the Yucatan with Alan Steinfeld, Joan of Angels. We're creating amazing events. This is one of them that we're doing. And we're going to do a stream on like the 1st, the 2nd, or 3rd, something like that, where 3 of us are going to basically talk about all the amazing things we have going on in 2023. And I'm going to start out with this here. We're taking a group of individuals to Egypt on September 6th to 16th, 2023. And this is truly next level initiation. And so you can check out the website. It's Ascension, what's it called here? EgyptAscensionRetreat.com, EgyptAscensionRetreat.com. And let me show you what's going to be happening. Join JJ and Desiree Hertax. We're going with the Hertax. First of all, the Hertax don't take people on tour to Egypt, guys. They go and do research. They are taking the first group of individuals on an actual tour to Egypt. and we're going to be with them. So Hertax also have made discoveries themselves, JJ that is, in Egypt. So not only with ascension ascension, I guess, activist and enthusiast and light worker, but also individual that's done some deep research, archaeological, and found some archaeological evidence within Egypt that connects to our awakening now and back then. So JJ Desert Hertag, Al Steinfeld, myself, and Joan of Angels, we're going to be going there together. Here you can see the facilitators here. It's going to be a 10-day tour. I haven't fully done the website yet, but let me show you the itinerary. AscensionEgyptRetreat.com. We're going to be going to Cairo, to the Sphinx. We have private access to the paws of the Sphinx. The Step Pyramid of Saqqara, Red Pyramid, the Bent Pyramid. We're going to the Valley of the Kings, the Valley of Queens too. Temple of Abydos, where the flower of life. There's no hieroglyphs on it, but there's a depiction of the flower of life on it. Hathor Temple. Temple of Karnak. Temple of Horus and Edfu. So on Edfu, there's no, the whole story of Egypt being the colony of Atlantis after the fall of Atlantis. We don't see any verbatim evidence except for one place. The story of the journey from Atlantis to Egypt on the Temple of Edfu. So we're going to get a chance to see that as well. Temple of Isis, the Great Pyramid. We're going to have private access in the Great Pyramid, the King's Chamber. There's some chanting, some meditation. And then day 11, you depart. So if you guys are interested, guys, this is, all right, so, wait, am I sharing my screen? Yes. Egypt is calling its people home. We're going there to activate and open portals. Portal Ascension, we're going international. We'll be on anything for, I'm moving to Europe for 6 months in May. So home base will be in Europe. We're going to be going to Netherlands, places in Netherlands where the stories of giants and the beds of the giants are still left there, and doing some documentaries there. We're doing a Portal to Ascension Glastonbury conference. And I'm going to show you guys that right now, the Glastonbury conference. So if you're in the UK or Europe or even anywhere else in the world and want to come out to Glastonbury, please do. And August 11th to 13th, we're doing a Portal to Ascension conference there. You know, when I was born in London, I moved to the US when I was 12, and I always felt that the day I end up doing a conference in England again will be a cycle that has completed within my life. And this is happening next year in August. We have some amazing speakers there: Laura Eisenhower, Lemurian Starchild, Daisy Foss, Geraldine Orozco, Vivian Chauvet, the Arcturian, Magenta Pixie, E Light, Apollo Asteria. We have Oliver Hunley. So this event started as a 2-day event, right? It ended up being a 3-day event because all these speakers wanted to come. And then it ended up being a 4-day event because we were doing a tour of ancient Avalon and like pre-Christian Celtic Druidic tour on that Thursday. So August 10th, we have that going on. Then 11th, 12th, and 13th, we go hardcore with this. So some of you may have heard people talk about Glastonbury being the heart chakra center of the world. You know, there's probably multiple heart chakra centers. But there's ley lines that run through Glastonbury. There's a lot of energy flowing in there, a lot of corruption that's happened there as well in the past, and, you know, different types of, you know, fundamental Christian structures being put on Druidic and Celtic homelands and sacred sites. So we're going there. This event is a ceremony, a retreat, a ritual, grid work, a conference, all of that combined in one event where we're going to open our hearts, activate our heart chakras, infuse ourselves with this awareness, this education, this remembrance, this spiritual awareness. We're going to send the signal and the frequency into the ley lines of the earth right there to harmonize the heart chakra of the earth and the entire planet. And that is the intention for this event. So if you're interested in attending this one, ascensionglastonbury.com. Okay, ascensionglastonbury.com. And then the final one I'll show you is that signature event that Bob in the room is going to be there as well, is the Ascension Conference. The Ascension Conference, Portal to Ascension Conference in San Diego, California. After 3 years of being online for this event, we're finally going back to in-person. April 21st to 23, San Diego, California. at the Marina Village Conference Center, which is like 5 minutes from SeaWorld. And this is Humanity Awakens Conference. We are emerging into a great time of awakening. The planetary shifts are creating an opportunity for us to awaken to our purpose in this lifetime. After 3 years of being online, the Portal to Center Conference is returning live in person and is fully activated for the mission ahead of all of us. So if you guys want to come, please do. Here's some of the amazing people there. Linda Moulton Howell, JJ Desert Hertek, Robert Schock, who is the guy that redated the Sphinx to at least 10,000 BCE through erosion there. He's coming to talk about Zep Tepi. Robert Edward Grant, Adam Apollo, Carolyn Corey, Barbara Lamb, Michael Quimo wrote the book on forbidden archaeology himself, Joan of Angels, Ra of Earth, Geraldine Orozco, The Stargate Experience, Shreya Dharma, Lori Spagna, Lori Wheeler, Sheila Seppi, Jenna Layden, Eric Rankin, Larissa Stowe and the Shakti Tribe. The music there is next level. We're going to have some fun. It's going to be it's basically like an edutainment theater show consciousness event. Vox Angelis, the voice of the angels. Esu Share the Light. She's going to be doing some light language over hip hop beats. And then, of course, the Alan Steinfeld himself, Deborah Giusti hosting the Ascension panel, Torquem G bringing the 432 hertz music, Michelle Anderson bringing the love and the heart chakra, myself, Tangela from Soul Search, and then John Block talking about conscious communication. So if you want to attend this one, all events you can live stream as well. So you can go to ascensionconference.com, ascensionglassry.com, egyptascensionretreat.com. Those are the websites. And you can sign up for the live stream at any of these events. I truly hope to see some of you there because it's really fun when we're there in person, right? Something unique happens when we come together and share light with each other and share a lot of hugs. Okay. And Susie says, yay, I'll be there for this, volunteering for you. Nice. Can't wait to meet you. Yeah, so Jessica, for the Egypt one, we're actually going to, we can't stream inside the pyramids and all that stuff. So what we're going to do is we're going to record a lot of content and create documentaries in Egypt, and we're going to be releasing that. So we're going to have that available for everybody to tune into. But we got to figure out the logistics for that first. And what we do, we'll send out an email, let everybody know. Let's see how we want to close this out. So first of all, infinite gratitude for all of you. Hope you have a beautiful rest of the year. And however you celebrate this time of year, and even if you don't, I just hope you have a good time in life. I wish you all blessings in the world. The world is a crazy place. Sometimes it can seem super chaotic, but when I see chaos, I see the opportunity for liberation. In this world where we've been so delusional for so long, there's been a cloud over humanity. There's been a forgetfulness. The only way with amnesia to truly remember our divine potential is by going through the darkness. The darkness is not against the light. The light isn't fighting the darkness. The singularity is where everything came from. Darkness and light both came from the same place, the singularity, the black hole, the void. The void, the black hole, the white hole, all comes from the same darkness. So I feel that the darkness is truly here to teach us the beauty of the light. And as we embrace who we are and we do the shadow work that we need, we can really step in to the highest version of what we can create on earth and truly live in peace and harmony. And that's what it's all about. So that's even what this presentation is about. I love to talk about history, love to go deep into all this fun stuff, but it's really about what does this mean? What can we do with it when we truly know who we are and where we came from? So you all, I'm going to go ahead and just leave you with the trailer for the Portal to Ascension Conference and sign off myself here. And we'll go ahead and watch this trailer together and then call it a presentation. So love you all. Thank you. Take care. And see you later. After 3 years of having to produce the Portal to Ascension Conference online, we have been waiting for this moment. The Portal to Ascension Conference is returning live and in person. Join us at the Marina Village in San Diego, California, April 21st to 23rd, 2023. As massive shifts are happening on the planet and hidden truths are being uncovered, we are piecing together the fragmented parts of our existence and timeline. At Portal to Ascension, we are dedicated to full circle awareness of the truth of who we are and remembrance of our connection to the cosmos. This is showtime. There is no holding back. Now is the time for us to harmonize the frequencies and create unity and peace on Earth. We are deprogramming from an outdated matrix system, re-educating and remembering an inherent truth that connects us all. As we come together, we activate our truest potentials, individual gifts, and collective resolve. We are ushering a whole new reality that we know is possible and is waiting for us to embrace it. Join founder Neil Gore and the entire Portal to Ascension team with hosts Alan Steinfeld, Michelle Anderson, and Joan of Angels over these 3 days, April 21st to 23rd, 2023. We will experience musical performances by Larissa Stowe and the Shakti Tribe, Vox Angeles, Share the Light, Admiral Apollo, and Torquem G. This conference features incredible luminaries such as JJ and Desiree Hurtak, Adam Apollo, Carolyn Corey, Robert Schock, Linda Moulton Howe, Robert Edward Grant, Barbara Lamb, and many more. Register now at ascensionconference.com. It is time for humanity to awaken.